The Moza Mini MX is a new foldable gimbal from Goodson, a company which makes a range of high-tech camera stabilizers and accessories. And in this video, I'll go through the setup of the gimbal, from opening the box to getting started shooting smooth video, and a run-through of the Moza Genie app functions and features. Moza Mini MX is a foldable gimbal with 3 axis points. So what we're hoping for from this gimbal is it's convenient and lightweight, but still sturdy enough to carry most smartphones. And perhaps, for bonus points, attach a filter or a small lens to the smartphone too. Well, first let's see what's in the box. First, the gimbal itself. There's a tripod included at no extra cost. A storage pouch which looks identical to the DJI version, wrist strap, charge cable, and a basic manual. The gimbal has a few stickers to let you know what you should and shouldn't do. Direction to mount the phone. There's a QR code to get you quickly to the Moza Genie app and so on. The Moza Mini MX is like the Hohem iSteady X. You have to unlock it before you can use it. It unlocks in 2 different places. Essentially, you are unlocking the motors. As well, the handle flips down in 2 clicks, so that's a little bit different. First position and then a second position. My first impression is that this gimbal looks and feels very much like the DJI OM gimbals. While it's plastic, it's solid and fits nicely in the hand. Moza have gone for a little bit of a quirky design here, with the tripod attaching halfway up the handle. It sort of makes sense because it makes it a little bit more compact. Problem is, when you hold the gimbal with the tripod attached, your finger is kind of cramped in here. Especially if you have fat fingers like me. I mean, it's not terrible, it's just slightly uncomfortable. Also, because the tripod is halfway up, you don't get to use it as a handle extension. See, this is DJI's OM4, and when you fold up the tripod, you get this extra length, which can be useful for certain shots. To use the gimbal with the Moza Genie app, obviously you will need to install that first. You can search for it or use the QR code on the arm here. Now note, I am using the Android version of the Genie app, and I believe that the iOS version will look quite a bit different. Anyway, once installed, make sure Bluetooth is enabled. Now, to connect your smartphone to the gimbal, you need to switch on the gimbal, obviously. But Moza says to mount the smartphone to the gimbal before powering on, so let's do that first. And this is similar to the DJI Osmo Mobile 3 with this spring-loaded clamp. And this sticker tells you which way to mount the phone. This is a removable sticker, but maybe it's a good idea to keep it on there, in case you forget. My S9 slips in easily, and I also tried my much bigger and heavier Note 20 Ultra, and it also fits without too much problem. First, try to get the phone balanced, moving it left and right. You can also move the clamp up and down. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the gimbal is less likely to have problems if you get it centered as near as possible. Press and hold the power button to power up and down the gimbal, and when you power up, the light below the button goes on. And this is also the battery level indicator. Once powered up, tap this button to start recording video, and again to stop. In photo mode, this will take a picture instead. With double tapping this button will switch between video and photo, and triple tapping the button will switch from landscape to portrait. Right, now back to the app. So after installing and connecting my smartphone, the app tells me I need to activate the gimbal. And this is something that other gimbal makers do as well. And with the Moza Mini MX, this didn't really go too well for me. So it asks for your email and gives you 60 seconds to input a code they send you via email. So I tapped send code. The time started ticking. No email. I sent another code. Again, no email within 60 seconds. I tried again, same. Okay, so now I decided to wait for a few minutes. The emails start coming. So I've got 3 emails with different codes. And 60 seconds is ticking down. I tried all these codes, but none of them worked before the 60 seconds ran out. So I asked for another code. Anyway, long story short, eventually the code arrived before the 60 seconds time limit. I mean, do we really need a 60-second time limit? I mean, I feel like I'm having to hack into a $90 gimbal I actually paid for. So Goodson, either give us like 30 minutes or I want Tom Cruise flying down a zip wire to input my code just as the clock ticks to 0. I mean, at least that'll be a bit more exciting. Most gimbals have basic modes which can be changed so the gimbal works slightly differently. So the Moza Mini MX has 3 basic modes: pan follow, pan and tilt, and FPV, which is first person view. And one advantage this gimbal has over the DJI Osmo Mobile 3 and 4 is the ease with which you can change modes. All you have to do is tap these plus and minus buttons, otherwise used for the zoom. To zoom with them, you tap and hold, but to use them to change modes, just tap and don't hold. And in the Genie app, you can see the mode you are currently in here, bottom left of the screen. Note that right by that mode indicator, you will find the gimbal battery and smartphone battery level indicator. Pan follow means when you move the gimbal, the phone will only follow your pan movement. So if I twist the gimbal right to left and also tilt down, for example, the gimbal will only follow the pan movement. In pan and tilt mode, the gimbal will follow both pan and tilt movements. However, the gimbal will try to keep your smartphone level, so it won't follow any roll movements. In FPV mode, the gimbal follows all your movements, including the roll movements. If you tap and hold either of the zoom buttons, the camera zooms in and out. But if you double tap the zoom button, it will perform an automatic zoom. The joystick controls pan and tilt as normal. Compared to other gimbals, this feels a little bit cheap to me. This is not a nice, smooth operation. I can feel the kind of plastic rubbing inside. Compared to the DJI OM3 and 4, this is not as nice to use. With some experimentation, I found that you could actually adjust the joystick at different speeds. So like if you just move it slightly, you'll get a slower pan, and then if you push it fully, you'll get a faster one. The trigger has several roles in the use of the gimbal, and there's 2 ways to use it: the pull and hold and the pull and release. One pull and release activates face tracking. 2 quick pulls and release recenters the phone. 3 quick pulls and release switches from rear to front camera and back again. 1 pull and hold puts the gimbal in non-follow mode. It doesn't follow any of your movements. 2 pulls and hold puts it in sport mode, and now the gimbal reacts quicker to your movements. The Moza Genie app can operate in 2 ways. The easiest is with everything in automatic. In the bottom right, you will see a box with the word auto in it. Tap this to switch to Pro mode. In Pro mode, you can adjust shutter speed, white balance, ISO, and switch lenses. You also get separate focus and exposure reticles. A yellow square for focus and a circle for exposure. If you tap them, you can lock them. You just tap and move them around to choose whereabouts on the screen you want to get the setting from. To enter face tracking mode, simply tap the trigger 1 time. It seems to work pretty well, keeping track of my face even when I'm moving quickly. Once it lost track, however, it just kind of gave up. Whereas with the DJI's Mimo app, the face tracking keeps searching even after losing track. And when I tested it, it found my face again and restarted the track. Other than that, I've found this version works pretty well. You can also set tracking by tapping this icon. Now draw across the object you wish to track, and it should keep a lock on that object. Tap the gesture control button and you can start and stop recording by making a gesture. There are 2 different gestures, one for start and one for stop. This seemed to work well, and the app had no problem picking up my gesture. This M in the blue box at the top is for the magic mode function. And this is very similar to the story mode in the DJI Mimo app. When you tap it, it will ask if you want to download the presets. Once downloaded, choose a preset, and then you will be given a series of tasks to complete your mission. Should you accept it, at the end you will have a little video made up of some quick edits put to some music which is provided by the app. So the app does the editing for you, plus there are some camera movements programmed in. There's also instructions for each shot to give you a hint as to what you should do with the gimbal. Plus, it lets you know how long each shot needs to last. Gimbals have different modes in different places, so it can get a bit confusing. As I'd already covered, the way the gimbal reacts to your movements can be set using the zoom buttons. But in the app there are other modes, like Auto and Pro mode for example. There's also different modes situated next to the record button in the Moza Genie app. Starting at slow motion we get time-lapse and then something called trajectory delay. The last two are basic video and photo modes. This is basically a time-lapse, but with some programmable features. So swipe to select this mode and now you will see at the bottom in the middle a new setting appears. And tap this to open up the options. Interval time, shooting time and track. Interval time determines how long a gap you want between the frames, from half a second all the way up to 60 seconds. Now you have to swipe to get the full range. At half a second, a still image is captured every half a second, obviously. At 60 seconds, a still frame is captured every minute, so that last setting would be a pretty dramatic time-lapse, as 1 second of video would represent 30 minutes in real time, if you play back at 30 frames per second. Shooting time sets how long you want your smartphone and gimbal to keep shooting in total. If you want to do something else while the time-lapse is being captured, so you can just set a limit. And you can choose from between 1 minute to 5 hours, or you can just leave it on infinite, which means you'll just stop it when you feel the time is right. The track setting allows you to program one or more camera movements. So for example, if you want the camera to pan left and then up as the time-lapse is captured, you need to add path points. Once you have your settings how you want them, tap Launch from the track menu. Your phone should now start capturing still frames. You will see a counter circling the record button, marking the time between each shot. At the bottom, you can now see the time remaining and the duration of the video captured. When doing any time-lapse, it's a good idea to lock the exposure settings and white balance and focus as well if you can, and then you will get a nice smooth time-lapse. Otherwise, the time-lapse comes out with the exposure constantly adjusting for each frame and it doesn't really look that nice. Just a few other little things you might find useful. The button in the top left here locks the phone's aspect, like landscape or portrait, so when you rotate the phone it doesn't switch. In this menu you can adjust a load of settings as well as change the gimbal mode. Plus you can calibrate the gimbal if you find that it's not level. The button below toggles the screen info on and off, so toggle that off for a bit less cluttered screen. Then finally, this settings button with the 3 dots in a circle opens up yet more settings. One feature I found really useful here is the spirit level. Toggle that on and now you'll see how level your phone is in the gimbal. Sometimes it's difficult to know if your phone is exactly level or if it's leaning to one side, so this will quickly answer that question. And if recalibrating doesn't work, you can use this setting to fine-tune manually. This button gives you access to various grids, safe areas and frame ratios. And the last two buttons in the top right here are filters for different looks. You know, Instagram style. And here is a simple front to rear camera switch. that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you in the next video.